Welcome back to Fireside Giants, a featured podcast by Empire Sports Media. I'm your host, Alexander Wilson, and my co-host, Anthony Rivardo. Give us a follow on Twitter if you haven't already, Alex Wilson ESM, Anthony_Rivardo, and make sure to smash that subscribe button on YouTube if you're watching, and leave us a review on iTunes. We appreciate all the support. Training camp is here. We're dealing with kind of unusual circumstances, but we are here to deliver the news and hopefully ushered you guys into a better portion of Giants history. We've kind of struggled the past few years, and it's been tough. And here I am in New York, kind of podcasting through this tropical storm. And it's a little crazy outside right now. It looks like my power could go out at any second, but we're doing it anyway, and we're grinding through. So, Anthony, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I didn't get hit by the storm really at all down here in South Florida. They said that it was going to be like a hurricane and hit us, a very mild one. But to us Floridians, that's about nothing. So we were just chilling, and it never really hit. So, I guess I'm pretty grateful for that.
Yeah, you guys kind of go through the worst of it. We get the aftermath of most things. I rember Sandy a few years back, and you guys got, really hurt pretty badly. But, we had some trees knocked down. It wasn't awful, but, up here we're not prepared for that kind of stuff in New York. We don't really see the brunt of most of these big storms, and when they come along, it's always a little bit more intense than it should be, rightfully so. But back to Giants football, we have a lot to go through, a lot of things happening on the transaction wire, and just the Giants players opting out, some of them deciding to make that decision, and across the league it's been pretty prevalent, and they actually just instituted that Thursday is the deadline for players to opt out, because they were afraid that some players were actually going to decide to opt out and, just make their money. Because essentially, and we're going to get into this with Nate Solder, their contracts get pushed at 1 year. So if you signed a 2-year deal or you're on a 2-year deal, it doesn't actually start until 2021. So that's part of the opt-out agreement. And essentially they get paid like a stipend of $150,000, but it's really just a cash advance from their salary for next year. So it's not really a stipend. It's more like they're just getting some of their money early. And they can skip the 2020 NFL season. That's kind of how it's supposed to work. But the Giants, luckily, have only had 2 guys opt out so far, Nate Solder and Damari Skye. And we're going to kind of jump into Nate Solder in a minute. But first, before we do, I just want to run down the schedule for press conferences this week. So first off, on Wednesday, we have head coach Joe Judge at 12 p.m. So that's Wednesday. Tomorrow, Joe Judge will be here, doing his press conference for everyone to watch at noon. Thursday, we have Daniel Jones at 12:30, Dalvin Tomlinson at 12:40, so it's only a 10-minute interview for Jones, interesting. And then Blake Martinez at 12:50, so 10 minutes. We have 30 minutes worth of interviews there, or rather just 20. So not too much going on. But then we have Friday, August 7th, wide receiver Sterling Shepard at 12:30, Leonard Williams at 12:40, which will be a very interesting one. I'm sure he's going to get hammered with questions about his hamstring injury and whatever it might be. And then we have Saquon Barkley at 12:50. And if you haven't heard yet, this guy, Leonard Williams, showed up to camp with a hamstring injury. I know it's probably just minor and he'll be fine for the regular season, but it's definitely not the right way to enter training camp when you're already arguably one of the most just polarizing players on the team. A lot of fans are wishy-washy about him in the first place, and Gettleman giving that 3rd-round pick. What do you think about him coming to camp already with an injury?
I don't really think it's a big deal, but I think that it's going to be made out to be a big deal because it's Leonard Williams. He's so controversial and, like you said, polarizing amongst the fan base, which is why I tweeted the other day. I guess the timing of it wasn't the best, but it was just because I was reminded by the whole thing. I tweeted, I wish I could go back in time and stop Dave Gettleman from making that trade. I think it was a bad trade. Hindsight is 2020, but nothing about that trade has been beneficial for the team so far or the fans in my eyes, or at least not that beneficial. And so I tweeted that, and people were really upset in my mentions saying that just because he has a minor hamstring injury, you want to go back in time. And I was like, no, actually it has nothing at all to do with the hamstring injury. I don't think the hamstring injury is a big deal at all. He'll be fine. He's never missed a game in his career due to an injury, and the start of the season isn't for another month. So what slight hamstring injury he may have is none of my concern. My concern is just the fact that he's on a franchise tag right now, and he hasn't been signed long term, and we gave up those assets when he was about to be a free agent, and I feel like it's beating a dead horse every time I talk about this player, and I'm honestly I feel so done talking about Leonard Williams, but he's such a, like you said, polarizing figure on this team, and it's frustrating.
No, you're 100% right. And when it comes to Leonard Williams, he's going to be a Giant this year. There's no getting around that. So we might as well just root for him. He's already on the team for about $16.1 million on the franchise tag, as you mentioned. So what is the point of continuing to harp on the negatives or, whatever it might be that we can put Leonard Williams down? We really just want him to play well. We want him to perform. We want him to make the Giants a better team and hopefully help us win some games. That's the ultimate goal here. And I'm excited to see what he can do because he is a very talented player. He just hasn't been able to put it all together. And mainly because the Jets sucked. Like, the Jets have been terrible just with the Giants. Like, how do you expect a player to motivate themselves and, come in every single week and play at a high level when everybody around him isn't? So, like, that's a really big factor, and it's easy to forget that these guys are humans, too. If you're on a bad team, you're not going to want to play well. You really just lose that confidence, that motivation, and you have to factor that into their psyche and all the factors that go into being a good player. For the Giants, I mean, it takes an extreme talent. Like I just finished the Michael Jordan series like an hour ago. And the one thing I learned is that Michael Jordan was a specimen. You have to be on another level, another plane. He was always in the moment, and he always was finding ways to motivate himself. A lot of players aren't like that. 99.9% of players need an outside source of motivation, confidence. That's how they get it. Michael Jordan gave it to other people. He was one of those guys that brought that confidence into practice. He made everybody around him better. It's really hard to find players like that. That's the type of people the Giants need, and why Joe Judge is kind of harping on that confident and like on that characteristic style of coaching and managing. He's trying to bring in guys with those leadership qualities, those intangible traits. And I think that Leonard Williams just needs like a good team around him because the Giants sucked last year too. Like, think about his history. Like, he really hasn't had that much help in general. But now some cohesion with Dexter Lawrence, probably getting a little bit better in year two. Dalvin Tomlinson, we know, is an underrated stud. They got Marcus Golden back. They have Kyler Fackrell, Blake Martinez, James Bradbury, Xavier McKinney. We're going to talk about him later. So, all these playmakers, we need them to step up, and it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time for this defense to come together. But the reality is that we have a lot better pieces in place than we did 2 years ago, and a lot better than we did last year, just based on experience alone. So what do you think, we should expect from Leonard Williams? And if he plays well, do the Giants look to extend him on a multi-year deal?
I think you have to. Since you gave up the third and the fifth round pick, you have to look to extend them on a multi-year deal. And for clarification, when discussing Leonard Williams, because this is another thing that people were saying to me, that I'm rooting for him to be bad or that I'm bagging on him. It has nothing to do with that. I want Leonard Williams to be, like I do for every Giants player, I want them to be the greatest player of all time. If they can do that, do it, I'm rooting for him all the way. I'm not a fan of the trade, and I'm really not a fan of the toxicity surrounding the discussion of Leonard Williams. But expectations for him this year, I'm hoping he puts together a few sacks, maybe around 5, and hopefully he just is a really solid player, continues to get those pressures, because he does get a lot of pressures. He just doesn't finish it with sacks. So I want to see the sack number go up, and then I'll be pleased with his season if he at least does that. But I also want to mention how you were talking about the Michael Jordan documentary, and I want to say one of my favorite moments from that series, and it's kind of something that you mentioned, he had that one game where he needed the motivation, like you were talking about. So he made up a whole lie to people and in his head about the one guy who talked trash about him. He just got in his own head, and then he dropped like 60 points. That was so awesome, dude. Michael Jordan, he's the GOAT. Not LeBron. Yeah. I'm putting that out there.
No, I mean, I agree with you. During that time, now the NBA is such a shooting game. Everyone's shooting for the 3-point. It's not as physical.
I can't watch it
these
anymore.
Guys beat the crap out of each other. Like those Detroit Pistons earlier on in the documentary, the Utah Jazz, even the Pacers later on in like 1997 were brutal. They gave the Bulls a run for their money, and they really actually beat the crap out of each other. Like, I think Michael Jordan, like, he probably punched someone in the face, got punched in the face. I know Dennis Rodman got nailed a few times. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he punched him in the face. Dennis Rodman and I think it was Patrick Ewing, they both went at it really hard. And these days, you get suspended for that kind of play. So, in my opinion, when you're getting physically beaten up on the court and still putting up 60 games, still finding ways to motivate yourself like that, like you are head and shoulders above the rest. You know, anyone can come in and shoot. Like Steph Curry can come in and shoot if you're a really good shooter, but there's no way he's taking that physical beating back in the 1990s and surviving and playing like at a really premium level, in my opinion at least. It's not an easy thing to do. Those guys were badass. And I wasn't even around to see it. I was born in 1996, so I didn't even get to see it. Watching this documentary gave me a lot of perspective on how difficult it was to play in the NBA during that time. But, you know, that's kind of what the Giants need. They need to, like Joe Judge said in his opening press conference, put their pedal to the metal, put their noses to the ground, and really hit people. They have to be physical, aggressive. That's what we want to see from our modern day Giants. And they've been weak. Like, I don't want to see Janoris Jenkins, and you know he's gone now, but I never want to see players alligator arming tackles, not going at full speed into tackles. That's something that Xavier McKinney's gonna do. He's gonna go downhill, and you know, Anthony just did an awesome video on YouTube. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. It's sick. He literally goes through all of these different plays Xavier McKinney has from Alabama. He breaks them down. He looks at some of the negatives. And really just gives us an idea of what we should expect from him at the next level. And surprisingly, he's a little different than I thought he was. So you might learn a thing or two. Highly recommend. He did a phenomenal job. So shout out to Anthony for that one there.
Thank you.
And, you know, I want to go dive into Marcus Golden because that's the news of the day. And then we'll talk about Xavier McKinney more later because I know you have a ton of information. So Marcus Golden signed his free agent tender, $4.125 million for one season. What do you think about this?
I thought it was 5.1.
No, 4.1. 110% of his 2019 salary.
Oh, this poor guy. I think it sucks for him, you know. He deserved more, but there just wasn't the market that we expected there to be for him in free agency, which is really unfortunate. But I'm excited to have him back. That's the end of the day. As a Giants fan, I'm happy that we have Marcus Golden on this steal of a contract. I feel bad for him because he deserves more money, but we've got him back. It's official now. It's going to be exciting, and my quote of the day is actually from Marcus Golden. The question that he was asked is, why is the motor always running for you? He said, that's just me. That's how I play the game. The number one reason I play like that is to win. It's to win the game. I feel like if you're not playing like that, you're not playing to win. I always play to win. That's how I've got to play. And that's perfect. That is a New York Giants player. That's exactly what I would see or hope to see from a New York Giants player, is that attitude. It relates to the Bulls again.
I was going to say, you've been watching the documentary.
Doesn't mean a thing without the ring. That's the one quote that stood out for me from that series. So Marcus Golden, he plays to win. I'm really happy to have him back. He had 10 sacks last year. I don't exactly predict he'll top that this year. I don't know, because it's kind of an even more crowded group of edge rushers now, and I don't know how he's really going to fit into this scheme. That James Betcher scheme was like made for Marcus Golden. I don't know how that scheme is going to be with Patrick Graham for Marcus Golden, but I'm looking forward to it. I think he's going to have a pretty good year again, and you know, I'm just excited to have him back, especially for such a good deal.
Yeah, it was his scheme. You know, like that, James Betcher was with Arizona. Like, it literally was Marcus Golden's scheme back in the day. He's used to it. He knew it already. That's probably why he dominated so much, or at least put up the numbers he did. He did have like 917 defensive snaps. So it's a hell of a lot of snaps to get 10 sacks. So, you know, the success rate there is very, very small. But nonetheless, that's why he didn't earn a multi-year deal worth $12 million. He's sitting on a one-year deal, another prove it essentially, for $1.25 million. And it's kind of, you know, saddening. Like, I like Golden. He's a good guy. He has that motor. He kind of has that winning mentality, and you love to see it. But at the end of the day, his success rate, his pass rush rate just was not there. I mean, he did have a decent year. I mean, aside from the double-digit sacks, he had 27 quarterback hits, 72 combined tackles, which are both career highs, and then 13 tackles for a loss. So good stats overall. And he really is going to come in and just provide that competition. And I really, really like what the Giants are doing at the OLB position, just because you can't rely on Marcus Golden to be your number one dude. Last year, they really did that. They were like, okay, Golden, like, you're our guy. We're relying on you to get sacks. Because think about it. They had Lorenzo Carter, Ocean Eximitas. Those are the really only two guys that they had any faith in or like putting reps toward. So now they have Kyler Fackrell and they have Eximitas coming into his second year. And Fackrell is a guy that had double-digit sacks a few years ago. So I'm pretty excited to
Sure.
see, just this position battle kind of go down. And the one negative though is that he could end up stealing reps away from guys like Carter and Ximenez. And we're still rebuilding, so it's important that these guys continue to get live reps and active snaps. Do you think that they should be kind of worried about that, or do you think that Ximenez could actually beat out Fackrell or Golden for more starting reps?
To me, Fackrell's the guy. I think that he's going to be the guy that's the main edge rusher on this team. Marcus Golden was a surprise last year who ended up with 10 sacks, but I think that this year it's going to be Kyler Fackrell that surprises people, and I think he has a really good shot at 10 sacks. Similar to how Golden was entering that scheme once again with James Betcher, who he was familiar with, and he had a great year because of that familiarity. That's what I see with Kyler Fackrell. He's got the familiarity with Patrick Graham. He knows that scheme. And one thing about Kyler Fackrell that's really underrated, Blake Martinez actually mentioned this in an interview. He thinks that Kyler Fackrell is one of the best zone coverage linebackers in the NFL, even though Kyler Fackrell is an edge rusher. So I think that's something that fans need to keep an eye on is watching Kyler Fackrell. They might drop him into coverage here and there and disguise some blitzes. He'll drop in the coverage and then a cornerback blitzes and catches the offense by surprise. So I think that he's kind of versatile in that way. He can drop back in the coverage and play the linebacker role. But I think that he's probably the best pass rusher on the team right now, based on really his last two seasons. Last season, he really didn't play a lot. The Packers signed Za'Darius and Preston Smith, so pushed Kyler Fackrell down the depth chart. He still was decent when he played, but the year before that, when he had a career high in snaps and a career high in playing time and all of that, he had a career high in sacks and pressures. He had, was it 12 or 10 sacks that year? He played great, and I think that going into 2020 with Patrick Graham again, he could be that breakout guy like Marcus Golden was last year. But for O'Shane Ximines, I know you're a huge O'Shane Ximines guy, and I have a little more faith in him now that you hooked him up with Osi Umenyiora. But I'm
You're
not the
welcome.
biggest O'Shane Ximines guy. I look at his stats from last season, and I'm a little underwhelmed. I saw some really great plays, but overall, the efficiency, the production level, there were a lot of long, stagnant periods for him. I feel like he
Mhm.
needs more consistency, and that's what I want to see out of him. So I think he's going to continue to be rotational this year, but if he could start to get more production more consistently, maybe 2021, he's that starting edge for us.
Yeah, I mean, watching him, the biggest deficiency I saw in his game was his agility off the line of scrimmage. That was the biggest thing, and that's what I noticed. And you watch OC, and the other day, just to bounce back to Fackrell for a second before I forget, he had 10.5 sacks in 2018, and when it comes to playing the outside linebacker position, OC actually said this the other day, it's a lot different. He's a defensive end. So, you said I hooked him up with Ocean Ximenez. And he said the biggest difference between DE and OLB is that you have to drop into coverage as an outside linebacker. And mostly, obviously, you're in a zone scheme in the flat, more or less. So that is a big difference from when he played defensive end for the Giants to what the Giants scheme is now. When it comes to Ocean Ximenez, I think he has a lot of potential. I mean, look at him. He came from Old Dominion. That was the first player ever from Old Dominion to get drafted. So
Right.
that already is huge. He came out of that smaller D1 school with a ton of pass rush moves. Like he was very, very, I guess, elevated for a player coming out of that tier. And I think if he can increase his speed off the line of scrimmage, he can be a lot better, like just exponentially better. He showed really good flashes of talent. And it takes a while for players coming from that level at college to actually transition over to the NFL. The speed, the physicality, all of that is so much more difficult. The lesser you are down in the food chain. So I think that 1 year of experience is actually going to prove to be exponential for his growth and development. And I really hope he can not replicate what Lorenzo Carter did last year, because Carter literally had double the snaps and posted very similar, if not worse, numbers.
Yeah.
So that is terrifying to me. The only really good game he had was against the Patriots when he had that strip sack and then Marcus Golden returned it for a touchdown.
Hmm.
So that was like the only game that he really stood out. I think he had 2 sacks on that night. But with that being said, the outside linebacker group, if Kyler Fackrell's our best option, he got pushed down by Preston and Za'Darius Smith. I'm a little worried about it. I'm not like freaking out, but at the same time, our best guy was a guy that got dropped down the depth chart by 2 players. So
It's true.
it's a little concerning. I'm not entirely confident that this unit's going to be elite by any means. At the very most, I hope they're productive. But I want you to actually hit on this because you know a lot more about this than I do. Patrick Graham's scheme does not employ a specific pass rush group. Every single unit is built into this pass rush scheme, and they're going to really utilize every single group. So safeties, linebackers, whatever it might be, even cornerbacks to operate under that pass rush role, and it's going to be very, very distracting and confusing for opposing offenses. What do you know about that?
Right, the way that Patrick Graham's scheme is set up, it's different than. Let's take a look at James Betcher's scheme from last season. It emphasized the edge rusher position, those outside linebackers that we just mentioned, O'Shane, Lorenzo, and Marcus Golden. Those were the primary pass rushers, and that's typical for most defenses. Is the edge rushers are the primary pass rushers, but what happens when you don't have good edge rushers? The Giants have decent edge rushers. Someone in the comment section on a previous video said that they don't lack talent. They definitely lack top tier talent. They have some talented players, but they're all like average to slightly above. No one is like really good in this edge rusher group. So what happens when you don't have a good player in that edge rushing group, but all of your pass rushing is sourced from those edge rushers? You don't get a lot of sacks. You don't get a lot of pressures. So the difference in Patrick Graham's scheme is that he's making up for that by having blitzes. He blitzes a lot because when you're just sending 3 or 4 players, it's on the edge rusher to get that pressure, or maybe the interior defensive lineman. But most of the time with the Giants, we don't, because we don't have those supremely talented players. We don't have Khalil Mack rushing off the edge, who requires 2-3 people to block him. So when Patrick Graham's scheme, he uses defensive backs. He uses linebackers. The linebacker blitzes up the middle. Inside linebackers typically drop back in the coverage. Blake Martinez in 2018 with Patrick Graham blitzed a lot more than he did last year. He blitzed half of the number. He had half of the pass rushing snaps last year that he did when he was with Patrick Graham. So expect to see a lot of inside linebacker blitzes, safety blitzes, cornerback blitzes. The scheme is supposed to generate the pressure with Patrick Graham. It's not really that reliant on one single player, which is why we have such a stable of pass rushers right now. Like I said, all of them are like average to above, but we have so many of them because it's really next man up. Just anybody who's got the energy to get in there goes and does it, and they might not even be pass rushing because it's probably going to be a disguised blitz. That's what it most of the time is. Patrick Graham blitzed at one of the highest rates last year while he was coordinating in Miami. And one of the reasons he had to do that is because if you look at Miami's roster, they lack talent everywhere. That team was really, really bad last year. They've gotten better, but it was really bad. They didn't have any edge talent. And
traded away their best player.
Yeah, Minkah Fitzpatrick was gone in the beginning of the season. So they had to really, and when Minkah Fitzpatrick was there, I believe he was pass rushing from that safety position. So that's another good point there. So Patrick Graham, what we can expect from him, and expect from Xavier McKinney especially, is seeing these defensive back blitzes and watching the scheme generate the pressure. And that's one of the reasons, if you go check out the video, I explained it. It's one of the reasons that Xavier McKinney is so perfect in this scheme, because he is like a legitimately good pass rusher. That clip that I have in that video, I still can't get over.
Oh my God.
He's 6'1" and he's 200 pounds, and he goes up against an offensive guard that weighs 300 something pounds and just shoves him out of the way. He looked like an interior defensive lineman on the play.
Yeah,
he looked like an IDL, but he weighs 200 pounds, and he just throws the guy out of the way and gets into the backfield. I was like, what? Xavier McKinney just did that?
Rips him.
It was unbelievable. It was a legitimately good pass rushing move that you would see out of an edge rusher or defensive lineman. So that's why Xavier McKinney, I think people really sleep on that aspect of his game, his pass rushing ability. That's one of the things that gets me so excited about him. I think he's going to be the X factor on the defense, because wherever you line him up, he's going to make plays in any facet of the game, even as a pass rusher.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think McKinney is one of those guys that's going to come and fill a role. And the theory behind Patrick Graham's scheme is, like, think about this. If you're an offense, you're the quarterback, and you know the defensive ends in a 4-3 base system, they're going to be pass rushing. So you already can rule a unit. You know they're coming. The idea in the 3-4 is that the outside linebackers could drop back into coverage. So you're not sure what they're going to do. That's just one factor that creates a mismatch, or one factor that creates just a confusion on the offensive side. Now, when you have Patrick Graham, the theology behind his entire concept is that if every single group is blitzing at different times, the offenses have no idea what's going to happen. They can't guarantee that the outside linebackers are going to blitz. They can't guarantee that the linebackers are going to drop into coverage. They can't even guarantee the cornerbacks are going to be in coverage. So that's kind of the idea, to create confusion. And that way you can get guys out of position. You can create more mismatches. It's all about system and scheme and matching up to opposing offenses. We're going to see a lot of different, schemes being utilized throughout the season depending on the opponent. And Joe Judge said that even on offense, and with Jason Garrett as well. They're going to be changing their systems based on the opponent. And I think it's important to get this out of the way early. It's going to be struggle. There's going to be some struggles early on, okay? This is not going to be an easy transition. When you have a complex offensive, defensive scheme to put in place that actually is rotating and evolving as you go, this is not something that you can expect to be 100% right out of the gate, right? Especially during a virtual offseason where a lot of these players just got together like 4 days ago.
With no preseason.
It's going to take time. With no preseason, it's going to take time. I actually don't expect the Giants to have that great of a year just because of that. But to get the wheels churning, seeing some success, seeing some development as the season goes on, that's really what I want to see. This is a rebuild year. I don't anticipate making the playoffs, but what I really want to see is from week 1 to week 16, the team has progressed and we see a different unit altogether. Every unit showing improvement, progress, an understanding of the playbook more, and they're adapting to each thing. Because think about it, not only is there no preseason and the virtual concepts and everything, the very diverse scheme that Garrett and Patrick Graham are instituting. Not only that, but we have a ton of youth. They don't even have experience in the NFL yet. They haven't seen these defensive schemes that NFL teams employ, and that's another huge issue that we're going to see come up, and why this is not going to be an easy transition. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard. It's going to take time. But think about it. Do you think the Patriots were really good right off the bat? No, it took years. It took time for them to build a culture, build a system, and then, they plug in the right pieces, and then bam, you're off to the races. But you have to have those fundamental building blocks, and I think the Giants did that with Andrew Thomas, Xavier McKinney. I even think Blake Martinez could be a building block in the middle. They want... It's debatable. They want Leonard Williams to be that guy. They really want him to be, which is why they traded for him in the first place. I think Dalvin Tomlinson is that guy, and I really think Dexter Lawrence is one of those guys. That's how I feel about those specific players. I even think Jabril Peppers could be one of those guys. I think it's very important to say this right now, that Jabril Peppers is vastly underrated. And the reason I say that is because last year, he played in a strong safety role compared to a free safety in 2018. He had almost identical stats last year to his 2018 season in 5 less games.
True.
Okay? So when people say, Jabril Peppers isn't that good, he hasn't produced... I see why you say that, but he replicated his best season in 2018 in 5 less games last year. What does that tell you? He took a step forward, a big one. And he's good against the run for the most part. He could get a little bit better in coverage. He's slimmed down. He looks leaner. He looks meaner. And he looks ready to dominate. And I really want to see him take that step forward, because if he does, the Giants are in really good position, because he's essentially like a Landon Collins figure with better coverage abilities. That's what his potential could be. Again, I think Landon Collins will always be a better tackler, will always be a better run stopper. But I think that Jabril Peppers' ability to cover could actually elevate him above Landon Collins.
I agree. I think he does need to improve in coverage a little bit. He does have some gaps here and there. And you mentioned the run support. He has a pretty bad tendency. McKinney does as well sometimes, where they both like to just sprint in and dive and try and take people out. And sometimes that does lead to some fumbles. Jabril Peppers forced a fumble, I think, on against... Who was it? The Vikings, I think he forced a fumble. He just sprinted in, dove, and knocked the ball out. But sometimes he does that and he gets juked out, or he just completely whiffs and he misses tackles. So I just want to see him be more consistent with his tackling, and then more consistent in coverage. But he's going to be playing a different role this year. A lot of these players are going to be plugged into different roles. I don't think Jabril Peppers is really just going to be in the box, playing down and run support all game anymore. I think they're going to move him around a lot more because Xavier McKinney is here now. Xavier McKinney is going to take a lot of the weight off of Jabril Peppers' shoulders in terms of coverage because McKinney is better in coverage. McKinney is like really good in man coverage, and there are times where Jabril Peppers doesn't look so good in man coverage. But now he
Right.
doesn't have to be playing so much man coverage. He could just drop back into zone some more, or just keep coming and run support. So just the addition of McKinney and the hopeful development of Julian Love and really just everything that the team is building with all of these young players, as you've mentioned, and filling them all into their roles. Joe Judge said it in his introductory press conference. No square pegs in the round holes. We're going to have everybody playing to their strengths. And so far, every move that he's made has really reflected on that quote. It's really shown that he was telling the truth because the way they've constructed this team since Joe Judge has gotten here has really put an emphasis on having players play to their strengths and really building a team where you can fit players into any role where they need to be. And I think I'm really excited. I think this is a young group. I agree this is probably a rebuilding year. I don't expect much, but I just want to see week-to-week development, and I think that we've seen development from last year to this year in terms of the roster already. So I think we've seen Dave Gettleman develop, which is pretty exciting, and hopefully we could see the team start to improve as training camp begins, and then, of course, into the regular season.
Yeah, two things before I move on to Nick Gates' extension. I mean, Dave Gettleman had to make a big decision this year, and he had never spent a first round pick, let alone a top 5 pick on an offensive tackle or offensive lineman in general. That's a huge change in culture, a huge change in attitude. What else do you say? But Joe Judge had to have some sort of influence there. You can't tell me
Sure.
that Gettleman, after years and years and years of being a GM, never spent a first round pick on an offensive lineman. Joe Judge comes in and they select Andrew Thomas with 4th overall. There's no way you're going to tell me that he didn't have a significant input in that decision. No way. And
I agree.
The one more thing I want to say is that I think Jabril Peppers and Xavier McKinney are actually going to flip flop a lot at free safety and strong safety. I think mostly on late down situations. I think that they could switch back and forth. Xavier McKinney against tight ends, he's not the biggest guy, but his coverage skills, like you said, in man coverage are so good. I like the matchups. I like those matchups, and he's so fast. He can be right on your hip the whole time. But I think that him and Peppers, I think they will flip flop a little bit. Julian Love sprinkled in there. It's going to be fun to watch. Really excited to see those guys go to battle together. But on to the next segment, Nick Gates' extension. He signed a 2-year extension with the Giants, and it was great. We love to hear it. The deal is worth a base value of $6.825 million, and it could max out at $10.325 million. So undrafted free agent from Nebraska last year. Gates comes in, performs well at right guard, right tackle, starts in 3 games, has some moments at right tackle, but he doesn't want to play on the outside. He wants to play guard. He's training to play center. Reality is he's probably going to compete at center and right tackle, so he should be ready for that. But we'll see what happens. I think this is a phenomenal deal. You can, like Joe Judge and Gettleman said, you cannot have too many great players at one position. And having phenomenal offensive lineman depth is how the Cowboys have managed to have such a great running game. And look at their offense now. They're flying, soaring colors. It's amazing for them over in Dallas. So I want to have that same success. And to have that, you have to have a solid offensive line, great depth, Cam Fleming, Nick Gates, that's and hopefully Matt Parrott will develop as well, Shane Lemieux. So we have some guys that we're developing behind the scenes, but Nick Gates is one of those players that could actually become a starter. Where do you think that is going?
Well, I'll say when I read or heard the news that Nick Gates was being extended, it was music to my ears. Viewers of this channel know I am on the hashtag Nick Gates for Center 2020 bandwagon. I want to see it happen so badly. I love Nick Gates, dude. I think that he's a baller. He's athletic. He's a phenomenal run blocker, and he really was actually pretty great in pass protection last year, too. He didn't surrender many pressures or many sacks at all, and he played almost 200 snaps. He had a really decent 3 games for the Giants. I love Nick Gates, man. He's the one guy on this team, like underrated guy that I'm really rooting for. I want to see him succeed, whether it's at center or right tackle. I think, honestly, he's the best option for both of those positions, but of course he can only play one, so I think the bigger weakness for the Giants is at center. I think we can get by with Cameron Fleming at right tackle. So to me,
Mm-hmm.
don't start Spencer Pulley at center. Please do not do that. I'm hoping that doesn't happen. That's why I want to see Nick Gates
Yeah.
start at center. I either want
Couldn't even
Nick
beat
Gates or
out
Shane
Jalapio.
Lemieux. Yeah, Jalapio, I mean, he's not
Jalapio.
even signed to the roster right now. I don't know how to say the name. People have made
Jalapio.
comments. They've made comments about him, but I don't know. It is what it is. But
Jalapio.
Jalapio, I say
Yes.
Jalapio. I thought that's how. I swear I heard Dave Gettleman say Jalapio.
He pronounces everything wrong though. I would
That's
not
true.
listen
That's
to him
true.
and figure
That's
he
true.
says
But I
the
feel
right
like that's
thing.
why I've been saying it like that. So okay, I say it like a Gettleman, I guess.
Jalapeno. Or
Jalapeno.
jalapeno. That's what my phone autocorrects his last name to.
Oh yeah,
Jalapeno.
I've gotten a jalapeno text before. So
No, yeah,
yeah,
he's a good guy.
yeah. No, and I hope he's recovering well and all of that. But I don't want to see him start in at center for the Giants anymore, or Spencer Pulley. Shane Lemieux, I doubt is going to be ready to start Week 1. But if he is, maybe we could put Nick Gates at right tackle because I thought he played really good there. But all in all, he is an inside guy. That's what he wants to be, as you've mentioned. If we put him at center and then we have Cameron Fleming at right tackle, I do think
I'm fine with
this
that.
offensive line
Fine
is
with
going to
that.
be so improved compared to last season. I think he'll be really good at
Fleming's
center.
better than Remmers.
Oh my, yeah, definitely. I think so. And it would have been nice to have Nate Solder at right tackle. He's got all the starting experience, and I think that he could have actually
been.
really improved switching over to the other side of the line. But he opted out, and completely respect that decision. He had to do what he had to do to protect his family. So when you look at the offensive line now, we don't have as much depth as we thought we had. So Nate Solder's not there. So we've lost a lot of experience at the tackle position. But we still do have some depth, and we still have Cameron Fleming who can play right tackle. If not, maybe it'll be Matt Parrott, maybe it'll be Nick Gates. But Nick Gates, to me, center 2020, I really want to see him start there. I know he's been training with Derek Carr. I'm really excited to see what Nick Gates can do this year.
Absolutely. And I want to spin this into a more positive thing, actually. I think Nate Solder sitting this year out could actually be really good, especially for the cohesion of the line. Just think about this. Andrew Thomas coming in. He now has a year of experience at left tackle. I'm just assuming he plays left tackle in 2020.
Right.
He's going to get reps there no matter what. So he comes in with a good amount of experience at left tackle. Now you have Nate Solder, who they can plug in on the right side, and now they have Cameron Fleming as a reserve option. That is a best case scenario to me because we were already going to watch Solder and Andrew Thomas go at a position battle. I think it's even better during a rebuild. Now Thomas is going to get that live action. He's going to get that experience. Nate Solder is going to have all of this time. He's going to have a year, essentially, to really help his son. And if you don't know this, his son has been battling cancer for years now. Nate Solder also went through his own bout with cancer. So, his family's had a really tough time. My sympathy's out to them, and I only wish them the best. And I think this decision was a great thing for him and his family. Hopefully, everything works out well, and his kid, beats cancer, and Nate Solder comes back in 2021 ready to dominate, and he slides into that right tackle spot. And now we have Andrew Thomas there, who we know can protect Daniel Jones' blind side. Now we have a really good offensive line. We still have Zeitler. We have Will Hernandez, who's playing better, and Nick Gates at center. And you have Cameron Fleming and Matt Parrott developing behind and hopefully kind of just acting as depth, and Lemieux. That's a perfect scenario to me. I mean, in my head, it sounds like amazing. So hopefully that is what happens. Obviously, nothing's guaranteed, and things happen throughout the course of the NFL season. But that's the ideal scenario. But aside from Nate Solder, the only other Giant to opt out so far is Damari Scott. He is a reserve, I guess you could say kick returner / wide receiver. There was probably a good chance he wasn't going to make the roster anyway, so he probably just decided, you know what, might as well cash in on my deal now, take the year off, just chill. Who knows? I mean, the reality is the Giants have so much competition now. With no preseason, all these undrafted free agents, they got a bunch of wide receivers, Derek Dillon, what's his name? Austin Mack, and Benjamin Victor. They have a bunch of UDFAs coming in and competing. They have David Sills
they still have Corey Coleman on the roster.
Coleman, yep. Corey Coleman. So Damari Scott, chances were he wasn't going to make the roster anyway. Opting out, whatever it might be. Hopefully it's not for a family issue. Obviously you don't want to see anything health related or anything like that be happening. So hopefully he made a decision that was just more for himself. Anyway, On to the next segment. I want to dive into some of Joe Judge's press conference, highlights and what he said that really stood out to me. And to start off, obviously, he said Joe Judge says there'll be a competition at every position. He mentioned the offensive lineman inside and out at center and tackle. So specifically said center and tackle, which means, Nick Gates might be competing at both sides. Obviously, you have Cam Fleming, Matt Parrott. So that was a little interesting to me. The Judge on the quarantine for a quarterback. They're trying to keep all the players spaced out at camp. They did not have any specific thoughts on the quarterbacks. Obviously, those guys are in a room together, so that's why they might carry 4 quarterbacks. They released Case Kookus, but they have Cooper Rush, Alex Tanney, Colt McCoy, and Daniel Jones. So a bunch of guys in that room. You're better to have more quality guys than none, especially with COVID-19, like what that could do to a team. What else? He says, Judge said that the Giants training camp this year will be very similar to how college football programs structure their camps without having preseason games to get ready for. So it'll be a lot more intense. They'll be doing live tackling, I imagine. On Aldrick Rosas, we felt it was best for the team to let him go. Makes sense. They have Chandler Catanzaro now. A bunch of new guys have just been released, so maybe they'll bring in someone else to compete. You have, right now, no other Giants players have indicated they plan to opt out, so that's good news. About DeAndre Baker, who is on the commissioner's exempt list. Joe Judge will let the league deal with that issue. I think that's a good move. Don't even get involved. No reason to talk about it. Yeah. This is a big one. This is a really big one. On the extra cap space the Giants get with Nate Solder opting out, which is about $9.9 million, Joe Judge said, we don't feel like we have money burning a hole in our pocket. So they have about $16 million in cap space. They can roll that over into 2019, and that would be the ideal scenario. That will offset his contract, Solder's deal next year. And with COVID-19 happening, the reality is the cap space is not going to increase, most likely. Right. It might actually decrease. So the Giants are going to have to be really careful how they monitor this, and they're going to have to go about things very strategically. And that's actually probably good for them because they've been saving their money and making those moves to supplement, high-priced free agents, with draft picks. So they cost a lot less. A lot of better teams are going to have to release a lot of players they didn't want to. So the free agent market is going to be right for the picking for the Giants, who are going to have a nice chunk of change next year.
Yeah, it's exciting. And you mentioned the Joe Judge discussing quarterbacks in quarantine. And I watched a video, I believe yesterday, of Joe Judge doing a little tour of the facilities for training camp, and he showed the quarterback room. Joe Shaplinski was in there, which was kind of exciting to see. And they showed how all the desks for the quarterbacks were all very spaced out, 6 feet apart, all of that. It was pretty cool and exciting, and it was nice to see that inside look at what Joe Judge is putting together for the team, and they're definitely taking the proper precautions, and that is a really scary hypothetical scenario where if a quarterback has to be quarantined or if he does get coronavirus, that is pretty scary. 2 weeks without your quarterback, that's really a challenging thing to overcome. So, it's good to see that the Giants are taking the precautions that they need to, and hopefully everybody can stay healthy and no one does get the coronavirus so that we can keep all of our players on the field for 16 games this year. That's what I'm hoping for. And then with the salary cap space, they really didn't free up as much space as people thought they did, and a lot of people, as soon as they saw, salary cap freed up because Nate Solder opts out, people wanted to jump and quickly say like Jadeveon Clowney or Logan Ryan. Logan Ryan might be the more realistic option of those two, but probably neither of them are realistic. I doubt the Giants are even going to spend the money, because you really think about it, if you do sign someone now with training camp beginning and coronavirus going on, then they have to go through like 3 weeks of testing and this and that and get caught up to the speed. Like, how do you even catch a player up to speed with all of this stuff going on after you sign them off the streets, after they've been sitting? Who even knows how much they've been working out throughout this entire offseason? I just can't even see how it's practical to spend this cap space at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree. And in addition to that, these guys might be taking reps away from some of the younger players that could use it.
That's also true.
Like I said, we're not going to the playoffs. We're not winning a Super Bowl this year. I would love to get to the playoffs, but the reality is it's unlikely. We're rebuilding. Get those reps to as many young players as you can. Get them the experience. That's how you develop a team. You don't bring in 1-year free agents to come in and steal reps from the guys you need to develop. That's ridiculous. And that's why I don't understand why people they really want Logan Ryan. They really want this guy. We haven't even seen Sam Beal. We have a bunch of other young guys, Corey Ballantyne, even Darnay Holmes, who could compete for number 2 cornerback position, slot corners. I want to see them play. I want to see what they have. Maybe we have something that we didn't know. And I don't want to put Logan Ryan in there, who's been in the league for 10 years, and waste all those reps for a season that we were rebuilding in anyway. So that's kind of how I feel about it. But to head into the final segments of our show today, my fact of the day. And this is actually really interesting. And the older guys might actually remember this. I was not alive for this, and neither was Anthony. So really interesting to hear and read about this specific fact. So when Jack Mara died in 1965, he left his share of the club to his son Tim and his nephew. However, the two quickly found that their vision of the club and their personalities were at odds with each other. It became so bad that Commissioner Rozelle hired General Manager George Young to help run the club more smoothly. In 1991, Tim Mara sold his share of the club to Preston Robert Tisch. So that's how the Tisch family got involved with the Maras and the ownership of the Giants. And the feud between the Mara family actually is what spurred the league to take action and hire George Young and begin to kind of smooth things over with the Giants. So really interesting historical fact for you there, and something I didn't know because I didn't know there was that much animosity between the Mara family at the time. And it seems like the only thing going wrong now is the Giants and their ability to win. So hopefully that changes soon. And I think you give your quote of the day, so I'll let you give your fact of the day.
Give my quote of the day. Fact of the day. You mentioned an old one. I thought my old one that I have is also fitting to this. I believe it was August 1st, if I'm not mistaken, 1925. The New York Giants were purchased for a grand total of $500. Could you imagine if we were alive to make that investment? I would have made that in an instant. I know that was a lot more money back then, but $500 to own a professional football team, that's pretty amazing. It's kind of amazing to think about inflation and then also to think about just the bargain that was back then. I mean, the Giants are now worth $3.3 billion, which is almost
one of the most in the world.
So, yeah, top 10. So, it's pretty amazing. I don't know. I just think it's cool. I wish I was the guy who could buy the Giants for $500 back then. It does also relate to right now the XFL was just purchased. I think The Rock Johnson put in $15 million, so that's pretty interesting too.
Yeah, The Rock
shows
and
the inflation.
like Red Capital Group or something like that. So
yeah, I didn't know who the other people were. Yep.
Yeah, so it's kind of
more
cool.
Football
and hopefully, the XFL can bounce back.
Yeah, more football is more football. I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, you can't say no to essentially a farm system for the NFL because the CFL, XFL, they're essentially just getting those other guys to come in and perform and hopefully offer NFL teams opportunity just to pick them out of the grass, out of the weeds, and apply them to their team. So that's kind of what we're hoping to see. There are a bunch of guys that actually made the NFL. You never know. You really never know when some talent is going to impress. Think about Victor Cruz. If he didn't get that opportunity, he would have never been as good as he was.
Sure.
Or at least, the probability decreases significantly. So it's pretty insane to think, some of these undrafted free agents go there and suddenly they're like, wait a second, these guys are amazing. And then they deserve NFL talent, contracts. So that's something that we hope to see. But for my quote of the day, and this is Joe Judge, and I love this quote so much. It makes me so happy. You don't sign older players to coach the younger players, okay? I've got 4 kids. I'm not letting the 14-year-olds raise the 6-year-old. It's not happening. Can we please just that quote alone makes Joe Judge worth every penny we spend on him to be our head coach. I mean, I'm so tired of watching Antoine Bethea, who has been a strong safety his entire career, coach DeAndre Baker at cornerback. Where the hell have our coaches been? Janoris Jenkins has been in the league for like a decade, yet Antoine Bethea is teaching DeAndre Baker how to play corner and play secondary in the NFL. It makes no sense to me. None. And I'm not surprised DeAndre Baker got torched last year. Having good coaches is the first step to having a good team. You can have good players, but if you don't have good coaches to reel them in, how good would that Bulls team be without Phil Jackson and the triangle offense? How good would they really have been? So that's a huge debate. when you think about how influential coaches are, you really have to put the value on their head. We have an incredible group now. Jason Garrett's a former head coach. Keddy Fritchen's a former head coach. Patrick Graham's been with New England for a long time and, went to Miami, was with Green Bay, some really fantastic organizations. We have really good people. Jerry Shuplinski, Burton Burns, running back coach for Alabama. I coached Derrick Henry and Mark Ingram, both Heisman winning players. Mm-hmm. You tell me that the coach staff we don't have is 10 times better than what we did last year.
It totally is. And, coaches coach, players play. Players can help other players, but players cannot coach other players. I don't understand why this last coaching staff really was relying on players to teach players and coach players. Like I said, coaches coach, players play. I'm excited for that to be the philosophy moving forward with Joe Judge's new coaching staff.
Absolutely, and Anthony, you should clip that. That little spiel by myself was phenomenal.
All right, I'll clip it.
I think that's worthy of putting on Twitter. So anyway, that's pretty much all we got for today in terms of the schedule for this week. What's going on with Marcus Golden, Nick Gates, Nate Solder, Damari Scott, Joe Judge. We're here for you to deliver everything that we can, and we hope everyone's staying safe, especially with the storm kind of moving through New York. Stay indoors. Don't make sure not to do anything too risky. And hopefully you guys and your families are doing well with the COVID-19 still in play. And I know New Jersey's kind of going through a little bit of a comeback right now, and so is Florida. So if you're listening from any of those other states, please stay safe, and we hope that you guys have a phenomenal day and enjoy some Giants football.
TVSO.